On today's episode of the 850 podcast, we will have some unsympathetic, explicit content, including crude humor and strong language. I've got Miss Kesia Blenn and Mr. Chime. Miss Blenn is a captain with, what unit are you with?
I'm with the 350th KCOM in Pensacola, Florida, Army Reserve.
Okay. And then Mr. Chime, you were
I was a lieutenant. Maybe I saw the little smirk on your face.
Yeah. I got to think about officers, man.
I served on the USS Okinawa.
Yes, sir.
It was an amphibious assault carrier.
Yes, sir.
And we deployed to Vietnam in 19.
Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to adjust your microphone real quick.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Yours as well. I'm sorry, I should have already done
Nope,
this,
you're good.
but all right. And then
That better?
Yeah.
Hey folks, we've got over 100 pre-owned vehicles with 20 of them under $20,000 that are safe, sound, and affordable. So shop us online at BillKramerGM.com. 6 decades, 3 generations, 1 tradition.
All right, cool. So you were on an amphibious carrier.
Amphibious assault carrier, helicopter carrier. Yeah.
So how big was this thing?
Well, it's 600.
I wasn't in the Navy.
The flight deck is 600 and some odd feet. It's an aircraft carrier, but it just deals with helicopters. It didn't have the Ospreys in those days that could go, jets that could land up and vertically.
Oh, the days of the Osprey.
So it's just, and it was a Marine helicopter squadron, and we carried on board a battalion of Marines, and it was part of the vertical envelopment. We worked with 3 other ships, landing ship docks, and they would send the boats in, the Mike boats in to land on the beach, and then we would send the helicopters around, come in from the other side. So it was a vertical envelopment, and while I was there, we did 9 different operations. So
Yeah.
we were pretty busy.
So how many deployments did you have to Vietnam?
Oh, just one.
Just one, but how long were you there?
We were there for almost 10 months.
Man. Okay.
Yeah, and then you got travel time, so you're gone for about a year,
Yeah.
And we resupplied every 90 days. We'd come into Subic Bay in the Philippines and resupply and get a little liberty, which was nice.
Captain Blenn, what do you do in the Army?
I am a cultural preservation officer for civil affairs, a monuments-man. Have you seen the movie?
I've seen the movie.
Yeah,
Man.
The monument, man. Yeah.
I'm a monuments-man.
Okay. I was in the infantry, so like the whole thing, I'm like, well, pogue.
Yeah, I know.
Well, explain that a little bit. Like what all goes into that particular job?
Mhm. So it's really about preserving artifacts, cultural sites, and things like that.
It seems like it would have been a thing during like World War II. Of course, that's the reason why they made the movie, because like Hitler was like all into like all the
Yeah.
religious stuff and everything like that. But like,
Well, he was kicked out of art school, right? So that's why
Yeah.
he wanted to steal all the art. So I joined at 37. So I've only been in, and I was sworn in at 38
yeah.
as a captain. And I did a direct commission after I went and enlisted training. So I've worked with the Smithsonian and DC and things like that, UNESCO and things like that. But
You
but
got to
I
go.
haven't been
Have you got to
deployed.
go into the secret parts of the Smithsonian?
I have actually. I've got a picture with Betty White's World War II uniform. Yeah, from back in their archives, which is pretty cool.
I have questions. What? Oh, okay, cool. If you could just move it a little bit closer.
Okay.
I've got questions offline for that.
Okay.
Just kidding. I'm going to circle back around to your book, Back to the World and Combat Vets Come Home to a New World. This is a novel that you wrote. Kind of run me through it. What's it like? Is this what all is
It's
it?
actually very upbeat. It starts off, well, the whole book started because I have 4 sons, and when they were young, I would tell them and write stories for them about the war, and Navy SEALs were hot, so that was Navy SEALs. And after a while, that got kind of boring for them and for me, and so it kind of morphed into a novel.
Yeah.
And a novel is boy meets girl. I mean, how many novels don't have boy meets girl? And so then it turned into a historical novel. I lived for a long time in California, Sausalito area, and he met a girl he comes back with post-traumatic stress, and they didn't quite know what that was back then. And then he says, "My God, what do I have here? Am I, because he killed people in Vietnam and is concerned about that." And then he meets a girl, and he's afraid to tell her because she won't love him if he knows he's a killer, and they have to work through that. And
This is, what's crazy. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but what's crazy about that story? It's like, this is a thing. Like, even though this is like a book that you wrote, it's a fiction. I assume
it's a historical novel. Yeah.
somebody who I was like really, really good friends with when I was in, and he had a really traumatic event that took place in Afghanistan. And he came home, he ended up getting engaged to a girl, and then it's just like combat arms and infantry life is already difficult without going to war, because even when you train, it's just they make things stupid for no reason. So life kind of just sucks all the time, especially going to the field. But like, you add that extra layer of like going to combat, seeing different things, and then he coming back home, still have that life going to the field, so you're not really around her as much, you're always with your buddies, life always sucks. And then the anger problems that come along with it, and then like the drinking problems that come along with it. It's something that nobody talks, like alcoholism, like in the military. That's a thing. That's the only thing you got, right, Kendall? I mean, that's the only thing you have to do when you get off work. It's like, bro, where's the Jack bottle, man? We're gonna get tore up, and then 4:30 tomorrow we're gonna get up and we're gonna run 7 miles.
Yeah.
Like, and that's just like how life is. So the novel sounds like it falls directly in line with what guys go through today.
Well, to take it all the way through, I think most veterans who were in deep combat, in the trenches, shooting at people, getting shot, they come back with some form of post-traumatic stress, regardless. And I would say most work through it. They have a good woman, they have a good family, they have a good religion, they have whatever. Something helps them come back, and they do. God bless the 10% who don't, but we pray for them, And in the book, I even say, this is the Vietnam War, but, talk to your veteran, and after you talk to him, or right after you, make sure you thank him.
Yeah.
So today is just as difficult as it was back then. And maybe even more so because it's so horrific, they come back so beat up, so maimed.
Well, people don't do the math. Like veterans, and promoting. So we are promoting Whiskey and War Stories, which is coming up on June the 14th. It's going to be held at Adelaide, and then also at
Harrison Rivard Attorney Law.
Yep, exactly. So, and so you're going to be a speaker. You're going to talk, and then we're going to have others, or you're going to have others, not we, but you know what I mean.
No,
And so,
the community's going to have
the
others,
community's going to have this time to hear some of these stories. But, one of the things that I, especially I got a lot of shit's like, I grew up here, so like moving back home, then I run into people that I haven't seen since I went in the military, and then I was just kind of like, oh man, what was the military like, and all this, and it's like I can explain things, but people just really won't understand. Like it's like, dude, like if you're gonna try to understand, I think that's a huge thing. That's a misconception too. Too many people try to understand veterans that come home from combat, and it's almost disrespectful in a way. And what I mean by that is it's kind of like profanity, crude humor, dark humor, whatever. Like, everybody says thank you for your service, but the same people that say thank you for your service, it's like the most disingenuine thing in the world, because chances are, like, the veteran that you're saying that to, you're not gonna like having a conversation with that person, because they're different. Humor's different, language is different, body language, everything is different. And then you wouldn't even invite that person in your home and have dinner with them. Like, veterans that are coming home are ousted all the time for their attitude, how they we're very, very specific. It's kind of like getting in a vehicle with a guy that, when you're in the military, everything is lined up, everything is organized, everything, and you're told the entire time. When I was in the Army, I was told the entire time, don't be the in the way person. And we come back home from where we were stationed or back home from overseas, and we're just surrounded by like people that have no courtesy, people that have no respect.
You should have come back from
And
the
then-
Vietnam War.
That's what I wanted to ask.
And-
Yeah.
And so
Today
when you get those types of things, though, it bothers a veteran because it's like, dude, like I try not to get in the way. I try to, just go, and like I got a person that, stands at Home Depot and they don't care that there's a huge line behind them, and they're just going to take everybody's time asking about where a screw is because they couldn't find somebody on the aisle. I mean, it's little things that fire off. I know the new age veteran, like it's like, I know it's a little bit of a different time period, but talk a little bit about coming.
Too old. To give a damn.
Well, talk about coming back from Vietnam. Then, what was it like?
Well, you come back alone. That's the one thing that's changed. When you did your 365 days, now this wasn't true in the Navy because we were on the ship, but when you were on the ground, you came back alone. Your 365 days were up. They pulled you out of the jungle, out of the bush, out of the swamp, put you on a plane and sent you back to San Francisco. And you walked off the plane like, what the hell am I doing here? You're alone, and these people are spitting on you and throwing red paint on you. And
That was it.
That was the
thing
yeah,
back
that
then.
never happened to me. But now they come back as a unit, and there aren't too many people who are going to spit on you if you got 100 guys with guns. They're not going to do it. So, and I think there's more respect when they come back.
Yeah.
I think generally there's more respect. These protesters, Palestinian supporters, and that's fine, but you don't crap on one country to support another, and now we're getting off the subject a little bit.
No, we're right on topic.
No, I mean, we talked about.
Going back to that though, going back into detail. So that literally happened to you. You were in Vietnam one day. You got put on a plane.
No. I said on the Navy it's different because
Okay.
you're on a boat. They don't send
Yeah.
you home. You got to have the boat
Yeah.
run. So we would come back as a unit.
Yeah.
The ship would pull in, and we're all there. We're on a Navy base. We're not at San Francisco Airport. We're all the protesters, I guess, were.
Yeah, I think nowadays they have these different. They quarantine you when you come back from a combat zone. You're quarantined. You probably know more about it than I do. Okay. I think you're quarantined for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
They're trying to make sure that like you're kind of like
you understand you're
you're
awake
here.
and not going to
So-
go bayonet somebody.
Yeah.
So I know my brother. Now he was 19 Delta, so Cav Scout, Girl Scout. Make fun of. There's a rivalry between 19 Deltas and 11 Bravos, but which is kind of funny because me and my brother always. Anyway, he went to Syria, and when he was in Syria, I don't know much about. I know guys that were over there around the same time period he was, and they did a lot of aftermath, like cleanup, and so that was one of those moments in our country's history where, our president had straight up talked to a unit that was over there and was like, ISIS they were on the rise, we had them on the ropes, but they were going through, mass genocide type stuff and just waxing people. And Trump was just like, go in there and do everything you ever dreamed of doing. And you say that to combat arms dudes, and it's like there are some guys that I served with that are complete and total psychopaths. And and so when you go in there and it was like, we're going to strike the fear of God into this area, and they're going to know never to screw with the United States again. And we're going to make a statement. And so like my brother never, he never got a combat action badge. He, whatever, but that right there is more psychologically damaging than actually being part of the actual chaos that went on. To having to go in and do something like that, and then come home, and then people go, he's got anger problems, he
what's wrong with
cusses
you?
all the time, he blah 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 blah, and he's just like, and it's like, dude, what did you think you were gonna get? Like, this is what you're subjected to.
My youngest son came back. He deployed with SEAL Team 5, I was telling you. SEAL Team 5 and SEAL Team 7, Iraq the first time, and then he went back to Iraq as an emergency EOD, emergency response, and then he deployed with SEAL Team 7 in '09 to Afghanistan as 2 Bronze Stars, a Silver Star pending. And he came back and he had a pretty serious case of post-traumatic stress, became an alcoholic. And about 2 or 3 years ago, he went on the wagon and he's been clean. Now he works at he volunteers at the AA and takes sponsors and so on. He's married, has 2 little boys, totally different boy, but he's still, you wouldn't want to mess with him. I mean, if you challenged his kids or threatened him, his family, it would be hell to pay. But otherwise, he takes his kids to the ball games and the school and
Yeah.
So you recover, and that's what this book is about.
Yeah.
The guy comes back and he finds happiness, he finds peace, and it's only because he has people, and in the process, he helps a lot of other people. So it brings up your point. You come back, you're screwed up. You don't know what to do. You don't know where. You don't want to go to any place because you know, and especially if you've lost a limb or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's people who are going to help you come back, and it happens a lot. And a lot of guys come back, and a lot don't. That's the sad part.
Yeah. Well, even, going back into your point though, a lot of guys come back, but they really don't. That's another thing that I think is a stress. Like some guys, they come back home, but and even when they get out of the military, it's like the military was their identity. And it's very, very easy to see why. Like when you're I know for me, like my personal experience being in the infantry, it's like, it's the only time you can be a man. Like when you go to the field, you fight, you shoot guns, you cuss, you crude humor, it's not this Hollywood hot pink, we're going out and we're heroes. I mean, it's the boys going to the field training to kill America's enemies. And, but like a lot of these guys get out and they just they lose that portion of them. And it's almost like a failure. And then everything's always been provided. A lot of guys go in at 17, 18 years old and everything's been laid out. They've never had to worry about going to go pay an electric bill. They don't have to worry about where do I go get my water turned on?
Those transitions are hard.
And it's like, wait a second, hold on. Well, I'm red on dental. Where's the what dentist do I go to?
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, I need insurance. And then it's like all of these different things that add up after these guys go in the military. And if that's the only thing that they've known for, even 4 years, 3 years, and you come out and you're just like, dude, I'm lost. And then you don't have your boys with you anymore.
Well, like I said, most of them find their way back. I mean, and they really do. But they always have that memory. They always have that scar, but they've learned how to deal with it. And I know a lot of veterans, a lot. And most of them, they're fine. Some of them are screwed up. I grant you that. But that's the way it is. That's if they didn't have people going out there doing their job, where would America be? I mean, go back to the Revolutionary War. It's been the military that's been supporting the country and defending it, and defending the freedom that we have.
So where can people find the book? Do you have it on Amazon or?
It is on Amazon. If you're going to go there, look it up under my name, Lawrence Chime, because Back to the World, which was a phrase in Vietnam. When you were in Vietnam, you said, in 365 days, I'm going back to the world, because this is not the world.
Yeah.
This is bullshit.
But
No, you're fine. It's bullshit.
But, but anyway, so you can get it on Amazon, or I every so often, not very often, but every so often, My wife and I go to the farmer's market, and we do fish prints. I don't know if you're familiar with geotaco.
Yeah.
You print the fish on the
Yes.
cloth. But anyway, we sell those, and I bring my book, and I sell half a dozen copies when I go. So you could get it at the farmer's market in St. Andrews, Oaks by the Park.
Yeah.
When I'm there, and I'm not there all the time, but
Let me ask you something, because it's a big thing. It was a big thing during Iraq, Afghanistan, which is like guys got a war is a drug. It's very, very addicting. During the Vietnam era, did you see that? Like, did you see guys? They were ready to go back.
Again, I wasn't privy to being on the ground that much. I was boots on the ground
Yeah.
in Da Nang maybe a dozen times. But I didn't see the guys in the bush, But on the ship, I mean, guys would, you're not allowed to have alcohol on the ship. So guys would get a case of aftershave lotion from their girlfriend or somebody, and they would be drinking aftershave lotion because it was 60% alcohol. And there was crap like that. I mean,
I don't think it was Agent Orange that got him.
No, it wasn't.
I'm just kidding.
Well, it's funny because in the military, at least back then, I mean, you get some guys that they didn't have shoes. They didn't know what the heck to do. One guy, he was in my division, and he wanted to get a watch, and so he borrowed the money to get a watch, and then he pawned it so he could have money to buy beer.
Yeah.
Well, he bought the watch for $50 and sold it for $5, and then had some beer, and then they said, "Well, you still owe him the $50." He says, "Well, I sold it." Well, you still owe, and so he'd have to they take it out of his paycheck every week to pay the people.
Yeah, I read a book back when I was like in the 5th grade. It was like the Journal of Patrick Seamus. I think that's the name of it. I think that was his last name, but I think he was 101st. But he wrote a book, or he had a journal, and the journal got published, and it was basically him throughout the entire Vietnam. But he was an infantry soldier, and there were some times in that book where he was talking about his boots would fall apart. And then he would use like 550 cord to like put the sole back together stuff like that. And then he would talk about how like his flak jacket would get torn up and like the brush and everything like that. And then it was like, you never take off your flak jacket because of for common sense reasons. But then it got to the point where like he just didn't care anymore, and then would take it off because it was just like it wasn't worth it. If I'm gonna die comfortable. Like it's and like some of these guys, but some of the stories that were in there were crazy. But it kind of lines up with what. Yeah, I mean it's so. All right, so I'm gonna switch back over to you.
Okay.
So okay, so you've been in for
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, so I'm a baby in those terms. Yeah.
No deployments yet, or
No deployments, no.
any cool trainings? You're an officer. They should be sending you to airborne school soon.
Well, I could sign up for airborne, but I can't run that fast.
You only have
You don't
to,
have to
it's
run, you only jump.
9 minute. I think
Exactly.
when I went to airborne school, it was like 4 miles at like a 9. I think maybe it was an 8:30.
It's 8 miles and 9 minutes, but 8 miles that's a lot. I could do 9 minutes for probably 2.
When did they move it up to 8 miles?
I don't know. My son's 82nd though. He just went.
Yeah,
So
yeah. That's funny.
yeah, so I'm not there yet. Maybe, but
Yeah,
clock is ticking. So
it's well, 8 miles isn't that far, so it's really.
I would like to
on the-
bring something up if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
We talk about all the horrors and everything, but going into the military generally, a lot of people don't go into combat, or even if you do,
Yeah.
that's one deployment, and then they come out and they do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of interesting thing happens even in the short time that I was in the Navy that are positive. There were highlights in my life.
Absolutely.
I mean, on my first ship, which was the last of the straight deck, wood deck carriers, the Essex class carrier, we picked up the Gemini 5 space capsule. Well, that's pretty cool, and my kids go, "Really, you did that, Dad? Holy cow!" So there are good things that happen
Absolutely.
as well.
What's one of your funniest stories that happened to you? While
funny?
I'll come in. Let me take off so I don't get an echo. I'll help you out here, Ron, since I know a little bit about the Navy being a Marine.
All right.
So since you were on a boat, are you a WOG or a shellback?
Well, a shellback crosses the equator. And I'm not sure about a WOG. I know they have SEALs in the Navy.
Well,
The WOG is going into like Arctic, right?
no, it was
I don't know.
when you go through and you're being shellbacked. They call you what, a WOG, because you're not a shellback, and so you're just, I'm a WOG until eventually when you're the graduation, as I air quotes.
My
You're a shellback then, and you can say I'm a shellback, and you don't have to say I'm a WOG.
Okay, well, I was a member of the Golden Dragon going over the international date line.
oh wow,
So
yeah.
you lose a day and then you gain a day. So
Yeah, my father-in-law did 22 years. He was they call the guy that like maintains the ship. But he was a bosun's mate.
oh yeah,
And so like yeah, he did that. So he's got some cool stories about going into the Arctic Circle and going across the equator. I think he's been in every body of like. I think he's been out. Like he's sailed every sea. Yeah, he talks about like all these initiation type things whenever you do stuff.
Yeah,
And there's tradition with the Navy.
well,
and
it used
stuff
to be
like that.
pretty rough, from what I understand, and now it's tamed down
That's
quite
what
a
he
bit.
said. He was like, he goes, he was talking about, I guess, the shellback. Like, it used to be when you got your shellback, you got like this certificate, and like it showed like a mermaid, and she was completely topless. And like nowadays, they have like like a bikini on her. And he's like, oh, and then he talked about how like used to be like you could make guys like crawl on the deck through like all this gunk and
Yeah, pretty-
stupid
pretty-
stuff and trash and make you eat out of a garbage can and stuff like that. He's like, they can't do that anymore. It's like they're getting soft.
Yeah.
And I read I came across an article on Facebook earlier that said Fort Leonard Wood now is saying no more profanity on base.
It's going to be hard.
I want to know how the hell that's going to work.
That ain't-
Because like,
It's ingrained into the
I
culture.
can't even stop at home.
Yeah.
well,
Never mind on
you know,
the
I'm
date.
happy you said that because that is something that like I have tried repeatedly since before I went in the military. I really didn't have a bad mouth. I sold cars, so I had to be very professional most of the time, and so I never really got in the habit of using profanity. And then, but when I came back home, I mean, I didn't realize that it was a bad thing until I came back, and I was like, oh wow. But like, I have tried to like kill it, and when people like, cause I ran for office. And people were like, "Oh my God, you just got like the most foul mouth." And I'd be like, "I said damn and shit." Listen, that's good. That's good for me. Like, and so, but the other part is, you just said it. You said it's part of the culture. Like when you're around it so much, like it's just. Like I tell this story when I went through basic. I had a drill sergeant, and he was like, I was taking part in M240, and it was like a time sensitive thing. And I'm like taking it apart. He's like, I want you to explain every move that you do.
Yeah.
Explain it. Like, and I'm sitting there like, I go, and he's like, dude, I have my ACH on. He's just like,
Yeah.
stop saying
Yeah.
replace it with fuck. It makes you sound less stupid. So it's just like, all right. And then from then on out, I never said again. It was just fucking like it was just that way. But what is the funniest story though that you have from being in?
I probably could think of a funny story, but I have what I think is one of the most interesting stories.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar or you remember when the Forrestal had that tremendous fire and the bombs were going off on the flight deck, and the ship had to come home. It was almost sank, and it was its first combat mission. The USS Forrestal. It was a super carrier, and it was deployed to Vietnam. And this was in July 27th, I think, of 1967.
I don't remember that.
Okay, well,
I wasn't born.
bombs went off on the flight deck. 40 people were killed. It was a big deal. I mean, big holes in the bottom, in the flight deck, and through the hangar deck. I mean, it was a big deal.
What happened?
Well, it's a long story, but what
We got
happened
time.
was a rocket on one of the planes went off on the deck, and it hit another plane. And in the meantime, they were getting ready for Rolling Thunder, and Nixon wanted 1,000-pound bombs on North Vietnam, and they didn't have any. So they were looking at where can we get some? Well, they found an old bomb bunker in the Philippines, and they were World War II bombs, and they were unstable. And the weapons officer on the carrier said, "You're not putting them in the hole. You stack them on deck because they're not going down inside." So they had these 1,000-pound bombs on platforms around the flight deck. Anyway, the rocket went off, hit a plane. That plane went up, and the pilot on that plane couldn't get out, so he had to climb out of his cockpit, climb up the nose, and jump off. His name was John McCain. I was the officer of the deck on our ship, and we were not doing anything, so it was a quiet kind of morning. It was maybe 11 o'clock, and I had the 8 to 12 watch on the deck. So over the radio comes any station.
Hey, Will, I'm checking to see if you have everything ready for the celebration.
It's coming.
In this net, this is Bullhorn. Please come up. I'm trying to get a radio contact.
Yeah.
Any station this net. They couldn't get anybody, so they were calling out blindly. So our call sign was Gallant Man.
Oh.
I said, Bullhorn, this is Gallant Man. I read you loud and clear. He said, would you please relay to repose? I'm going to tear up here because I do every time. Relay to repose, come up on this frequency. I said, well, I will. And I did. And about 10 minutes later, Gallant Man, this is Bullhorn. Did you relay to repose? There was a lot of tension and excitement in his voice. He says, look, we've got an emergency, you know. And I said, I will relay it to him again. And I relayed the frequency. And nothing. About 10 minutes later, a guy comes back. Gallant Man, this is Bullhorn. We have bombs going off on the flight. We got wounded. We got needed. I said, well, I relayed it again. And Repose then said, we're not authorized to come up on this frequency. We're not authorized. 2 minutes later, I get a call. Gallant Man, this is Supercharger. I said to my yeoman, who the hell is Supercharger? They have the call signs. Commander-in-Chief Pacific Fleet, SINCPAC Fleet. Gallant Man, relay to Repose. They are now authorized to come up on that. And that was the end of it. And we didn't know really what happened until months later. We came out in the Life magazine, and because they didn't tell us what was going on. And we were deployed, so we didn't get news. But to me, that was I was the first person to know that they had a real issue. I knew it was bad, but I didn't know how bad. And it was really, really bad. Like I say, about 140 people were killed. So anyway, that was
I think
interesting story, I think.
and back in that time, just reading and things that I've seen, even through research and movies, and he had, and I mean, I don't want to get political about it, but Vietnam is one of those wars where, and it's every fucking war. Like, guys that have no problem signing a man's life to a territory for you to fucking go and die in, when the person that sent you there would never go. Something that we've seen, through Afghanistan and Iraq. Like,
Well, Vietnam, why did we go there?
Saying, yeah.
Communism, maybe.
Yeah. That's the reason why I guess, I don't think that it should be mandatory for politicians to have served in the United States military. I don't. But I do believe that how do you honestly feel like on the inside if you are going to send boys, because that's what you're sending, because they're not, the misconception is, you send boys to, basic training, they come out men. No, they don't. They're still boys, and because I don't think that you really cross over into that manhood until maybe about 25, 26. That's when stuff just starts to kind of mature a little bit, and then you understand the severity of situations. And everybody's different. So, but that's just like my own personal belief. But the thing about it is that when you have a politician, local government, state government, national government, and it's like you're going to go and you're going to try to lead, in some sort of capacity in government, but you have no clue on what service actually means.
And stolen valor is something else that bugs the crap out of me. Guys who were never there, who say they were. That to me, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, guys dude, you get that a lot with Vietnam dudes, man. Like a lot. Like I didn't know how bad that was until I joined the Legion up in Lynn Haven. And I was listening to some stories up there where like guys will come in there and they'll try to say that they were part of like a SEAL team during Nam and stuff like that. And it turns out they never they couldn't produce paperwork to even join the Legion.
Yeah.
And like, oh yeah, man, dude, there's some crazy stuff that's out there for that. I don't think, I don't believe that you can ever steal someone's service away from them and diminish it. But I don't understand why you would want to lie about something that's just like crazy as that. Like at that point, you have an identity issue because like we glorify war through movies. So people think that that's what it takes to be like a man. And it's like, dude, it's the furthest thing from it. Because like the guys that actually go over there and they come back home, you don't want that life. You act like you do, but you don't. Like when you can, one of my buddies, I'll tell you a story. And he came back home and he has at the time he had a 4-year-old daughter. And I talked to him several times. Never really wanted to talk about the situation. And then he ended up going into the bathroom one night around 1 o'clock in the morning. A half bottle of Jim Beam that had been drank on the counter. And he went there in the shotgun. Why you would want to pretend to go through something like that, I don't know. You've got a problem.
Well, they don't do it to emulate. They do it to take credit for, the stolen valor. That.
Yeah, but
they're taking credit for something they didn't do, and to them it is glorified. And they weren't there. They don't deserve it, but they want to take I want to say benefit. I don't know if that's a benefit.
Well, that's my point. I mean, my buddy, when he came home, he couldn't even hold his daughter the same way anymore.
Yeah.
He couldn't look at anything the same way anymore. And I'm probably going to cut that shit out. But anyway, let's talk about something happy. What made you want to join at 37 years old? Because that right there is insane. I didn't know you could join that. I'm not saying you're old.
No, I had to get an age waiver. So, it was actually full circle for me. I was actually, when I was 18, actually joining, and I had my bags packed to go to basic training. And I was pregnant. And so that's how, yeah. So I came back home, raised my kid, never forgot about that dream, though I always wanted to be just a badass. And I always associated being in the military with being a badass. And so, yeah, I was 30, I think I got divorced around 36 or something. And I was like, oh, my ex never wanted me to join the military. And I was like, yes, maybe I can do it now. And
you got to go to jump school now.
Well, I did always want to go airborne as well, so that would really complete it for me. But
and you said your son's in too, so both
my
you guys.
son is, yeah.
That's
so when I joined at 37 with an age waiver, because for the Army, the cutoff is 35 right now. So I had my doctorate degree, and I went through basic training, Fort Sill, Oklahoma, January, just awful. Now they don't do the shark.
Yeah.
That shark
attack.
The shark attack. They do the first 100, which was one of my highlights. You're coming out of this week long of being pushed in, the same room with 60 other females.
Where did you go to basic at?
I went to
Jackson,
Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
Okay.
Yeah. So super cold, gray, dead. but a lot of really good stuff too. Like I loved like the foot night marches. Like we get up at, you know, like 3 and 4 in the morning and can't say anything, and you get your weapon on you, you're loaded down with your gear to go out in the field for a few days, freezing cold, and all you can hear are like the footsteps and the light of the moon. It's just like magical moments like that, and the camaraderie you build with everyone. So while I finished basic training, I was in AIT, and my son sent me a text message of, you know, of his contract where he'd gone in and talked to my recruiter and in Panama City, and he'd signed up for 11 Bravo Airborne. He hasn't done Ranger yet, so that's where he wants to go.
Ranger school is interesting.
Yeah, it's All American Week up at Fort Bragg right now, so they're having all sorts of events.
Yeah, there's no feeling like the feeling of being out in the middle of the woods, and like you're moving, you're doing tactical maneuvers with like a fire team, and so you've done a lot of op4 and stuff like that. There is no feeling like knowing that nobody knows that you're right there, and it's just about to go down.
Yeah,
like, hearing it, dude. There's you just hear the quiet of the woods. Because we own the night, dog. So 36, you joined.
I joined at 37. I turned 38 in AIT, and because I was the old lady, I was literally it was a lot of fun.
How did that work?
So it was interesting, right? Because I was older than like a lot of even the drill sergeants, and like I had my doctorate degree, so I'm like, you know, they're still talking to me like I'm a piece of garbage, you know, and all that sort of stuff. It was fun. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I signed up for this, but I loved it at the same time, and I ended up being, you know, just because I was old, they put me like in leadership positions and things like that.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. It was terrifying at first, but a lot of leadership development, you know, from those sort of things. I don't know, just all the experience. I have buddies, battle buddies, you know, I've got a couple battle buddies getting married in August. They got a kid, you know, but just like those friendships you build, the camaraderie that you build with everyone is absolutely priceless. I absolutely love it. I'm very glad that I made that decision to do that.
Yeah.
And my kid's not playing video games in my basement for the rest of his life. So I was hoping to kind of get that one too.
No, that's awesome. If he signed up to be a Bravo, like that's the thing, man. I just have everybody who served and who serves, absolutely, they deserve all the credit in the world for what they do for our nation. There's something about it, like whenever you hear that, like my son's a Bravo, and I'm just like, yeah, free blue cord. Yeah. Like I'm just like that right there is it's pretty awesome because and the reason why it's awesome. I still remember a speech that they made at my graduation. It was a company first sergeant. He got up there and he was like, and this dude was a salty dude. He had like 2 Purple Hearts. CIB. Just like, and he just chest candy was awesome. But he got up there and he's like, in front of all these people, and he's like, there's a reason why our enemies fear us in other countries. Because they have to make their citizens join to go to combat. We have guys here that volunteer, and it scares the shit out of them.
That's a good point.
And it's 100% true. You got to think about who we're breeding here in the United States. Like, just saying. But, so.
I was curious what your basic training was like.
Well, I went to OCS. So
okay, yes.
I went that was 4 months, and we really didn't, we had weapons training, but not a lot. We did a lot of PT, but we were learning the jargon, you know, how to recognize the different ranks and rates and understand. We had maneuvering board, how to maneuver the ship and figure out where to go and how to go and so on. And you learn about all of the divisions on the ship that, you know, that need division officers. And so you have to know a little bit about it.
So how does that work? So you got your commission, and then what normally are you assigned to a ship directly out of OCS?
Yeah, we had what we call a dream sheet, and they say your top 3 preferences of what you would like to do, where you would like to go. And so I'd like to go to Hawaii. I'd like to, well, they'd never get it.
Well, not during NOM.
You're lucky to get one. Yeah.
So I was assigned to a ship right out of OCS. I packed my car up and drove to the ship and got on. And 3 months later, I was a division officer. I was main propulsion and boilers division officer. And we we were refueling the destroyers that were accompanying us, and the captain thought it would be good for his new officers to go on the destroyer for a day just to see what it was like. Well, the way we got over there was highline. The two ships are going, like this, and you have a rope and a basket, and you sit in the basket and they pull you over. And it was a little disconcerting. And but I got over to the destroyer, and we got hit in some sort of a hurricane, and I couldn't get back for 3 days. There was no, we were just, and when you're on a ship, they have what they call a righting angle. And the righting angle is you can angle, and you get to a certain point where instead of coming back up, you go the other way. So the righting angle is you don't want to go beyond that, because then you'll come right side up.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the righting angle was, but I was on the bridge, and we're looking at the angelometer. I forget what you call it, and it was 40 degrees. So we're like this. 45 degrees, 46 degrees, 47 degrees, and everybody, including the captain, is going, holy crow, what, another couple degrees, we're going to go the other way. And the storm is raging, and we finally popped back up, and I was on there for 3 days. I sat down at the wardroom table, and there was a rope, and, nobody said anything, so I sat down, and I had my drink and my soup, and all of a sudden, the ship rolled, and I slammed back about 3-4 feet into the wall, and then the ship rolled the other way, and I came back, and I said, "Oh, that's what that rope was for." And they all laughed. They thought that was very funny, But then the helicopter finally came. They didn't have helicopter pads, so they drop a hook down, and you wrap it around yourself, and they pull you up into the helicopter. So that was kind of interesting. But I was in the Navy 3 months, and that was one of my first experiences. So you grow up pretty quick, You say you're not a man till you're 26. Sometimes some of the stuff you do in the military, you got to man up right quick.
There's definitely-
Not everyone, but so you learn quick, and
So a lot of the complaints that come through from like Vietnam veterans are a lot with the VA because of the filing system that was done back in the day for like medical issues and things of that nature. Have you?
I'm 100% medically disabled.
Okay.
Primarily through Agent Orange, which is interesting because being on a ship, you'd think you weren't exposed.
Well, actually, that's what I was about to ask. I was like, how were you exposed to it?
Because we had the Marines on board, and they were coming and going, and we had helicopters bringing back the wounded, and it was back and forth. We were there all the time. Plus, I was boots on the ground in Da Nang at least a dozen times. So they said everybody who was on that ship is eligible. Well, I didn't touch the VA until I was 75.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I say I'm fine. I don't need anything.
Yeah.
And then I've been hearing all these guys saying, "Oh yeah, I get 120 a month." What for? I have tinnitus. Tinnitus? What? That's disability. I
Is that it? Do they even rate that now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's still there. Anyway, and then in 2019, I'm sorry, all of a sudden the shit hit the fan, and I had whatever could go wrong went wrong. I had open heart surgery. I have a pacemaker. I had prostate cancer, Gleason 10, which is the most aggressive.
Wow.
I had everything. My feet, what they call it, foot neuropathy. Now I beat the cancer. So I had 47 radiation treatments and 6 months of chemo, and I beat it. But that beat the hell out of my body. So now I have all this other stuff. So I think I walk 2 miles every day. I go in my pool and I do aerobics.
Yeah.
I try to stay as active as I can. And I think I see other buddies my age or less dying. One good buddy, I was telling you, I was telling our producer, I met one guy. I was talking about the Okinawa, which was the name of my ship. And I kept talking about this reunion we were going to have. And he goes, Larry, what reunion? What Okinawa are you talking about? And I said, the USS Okinawa. And he says, oh, he says, when were you on it? I said, 1967. He says, me too. He was one of the Marines on board when I was on board.
wow.
And we've become good friends. And now he's got Alzheimer's, and he doesn't know who I am unless he sees me. Once he sees me, he says, hey, Larry, you know. But if you say Larry, he won't even know. So, you know, a lot of my buddies are younger, a lot younger. Two of my very good friends, one is 35, one is 27. I ended up marrying them both. They asked me if I would marry them. I said, I can't marry you. You know, what are you kidding? They said, no, you can. Well, okay, it's an honor. I'll do it. But I know that I could. But so a lot of I have more young friends than I do old friends because they're all dying, you know. I mean, I'm 83, so I'm in that bracket.
You look good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, but I try to work out and
Yeah,
do what I can.
the VA injury thing is something that I've always thought is kind of funny because, they do change the ratings on all that stuff based on your job. Because I always found it funny, like guys would be like, "Oh, I've got back problems, I got knee problems." And I'd be like, "Oh, what's your job?" And I'm like, "Oh, I was a paratrooper." I'm like, you didn't know that was going to happen?
Yeah.
like, you're going to have,
But
they
still,
owe
they
me.
take-
And I'm like, no, I get it. Like, you should definitely have medical, care for the rest of your life for what's been done. But
Well, there's a lot of people
Yeah.
who take advantage of
they
it.
do.
I know some of them, and I know I don't want to mention any names, but guys who, oh, my knees, well, what did you do? I played volleyball. Well, that's something that shouldn't. How do you separate your term in service from playing volleyball, or
Yeah, guys will, I know.
But the VA has been good to me.
Yeah.
Except that they're sometimes very slow, infuriatingly slow. But when the chips are down, they've come through for me anyway.
Yeah.
I try not to take advantage, But
Yeah, I know my brother has struggled with the VA quite a bit, like for appointments and stuff like that.
yeah,
Because it's one of those where it's like, yeah, man, I got this. So, and I'm not going to go into his medical stuff, but he's got a very, very specific health issue. And it was like, yeah, like I need this medicine. I need this to be done. And they're like, yeah, 6 weeks, we can get you. And it's like, 6 weeks, dude. Do you not understand what I just said to you right now? I'm having heart palpitations and freaking. And so then they're like, yeah, I mean, that's just, and they need good doctors too, because I think they wrote an article not too long ago, and they were finding out that a lot of VA doctors are actually doctors that got hit for malpractice. And so they go over to the VA system. So a lot of the doctors so there's a lot that's into that. I mean, how much truth there is to some of these articles, I don't know, but I do know like a lot of the doctors that the VA has, they're overworked, they're understaffed.
oh yeah.
Because I mean, even like when I go for my yearly checkup, I made the joke to the doctor that I spoke to a couple months ago, and I was just like, how many patients are you going to see today? He's like, 163. And I'm just like,
I have a lot.
huh?
Yeah.
163 people? And he's like, yep. So anything else you need? And I'm like, I've only been in here for 5 minutes. It's like, well, I got to see 163 patients today.
No, I've only been seeing the VA doctor since 2019.
Yeah.
But so far, I've had 5 different doctors, and each one has to read the thing and find out what's going on. So when I go in for my annual,
Yeah.
they're reading to see what's going on, and by the time they've done that, the time is up.
Yep.
Yeah.
But they send you out. So I have good cardiologists, good urologists, good. They send you out, and you have some choices. You can say, I don't want to see that doctor. I want to see a different doctor.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're seeing the best, some of the best,
Yeah.
in locally.
Yeah. I know they do it with my dental. They send me out for dental now, and they got me like the best dentist at Baldwin Dental Clinic.
I have a question, if I may. Getting back to the Whiskey and Warriors. Well, how do you buy tickets? I mean, if I tell people, and they go, oh, really? You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they available for sale? How
Yes.
do you do that?
Yeah, they are. They're available for sale. We've got a Facebook is our community's, we found as our community's kind of biggest social media platform. So we've got a Facebook event out there, but I do have flyers with me. We got a QR code you can scan and purchase the tickets and all of that stuff and pick your time slot and location. So yeah, they are for sale. Facebook, it's Panama City Parks Culture Recreation page, and the event name is Whiskey and War Stories.
Yeah. The book. I'm going to buy your book.
Okay.
I'm going to get on tonight. I'm going to purchase your book and make sure that
in order to write a review, when you go online, there's a lot of reviews. But in order to write a review, you have to buy it from Amazon.
I stay out of the
know.
comment sections.
No, but it's a lot of really good reviews.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I'm sure it is.
And I had a lot of my SEAL buddies read it and make any little corrections that needed to be made.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, you build a story using the cast of characters from SEAL Team 1 during Vietnam War. You're basing this off of SEAL Team 1 during Vietnam?
well, SEAL Team 1 was West Coast.
Yeah.
SEAL Team 2 was East Coast. So
Yeah.
it was a West Coast. He was on the West Coast, the character. So,
Wow. Yeah, no, I'm going to buy it. Yeah, my uncle was a SEAL. He was with 8. I can't remember. And then cousin was pararescue, and then he ended up going the DevGru route, and then so that special warfare community is actually pretty big in my family. But
well, actually, they may still have some copies, but the UDT SEAL Museum down in Fort Pierce, Florida, they have it in their bookstore.
do they really?
They did. They bought a bunch, and I don't know if they have any more left. I gotta
That's awesome.
maybe talk to them.
Sweet. Did you write any more books, or is that the only one?
Well, I wrote a memoir of my own life, primarily for my grandkids and my great grandkids.
Yeah.
I have 4 sons, 5 grandsons, and 5 great grandsons. So I want them, when I'm gone, they get old enough to wonder. They say, "Well, who was Grandpa Larry?" Well, what would Well, here, read his book.
Awesome.
And I'm currently in the process of writing a children's book, because my youngest son now he's the EOD deployed with the SEALs. He now has 2 little boys, and he says, I was telling him I saw The Old Man and the Sea. I read the book again and saw the movie again, and I was telling him, and he said, Dad, I tell fishing stories to my boys all the time. Why don't you write a book for them? And I said, oh, okay. So I wrote the book, and it's a children's book, and it's now currently in the publisher's hands, and we're going back and forth on illustrations, what do they look like, and so on. But it's instead of the old man in the sea, it's the young boy in the sea, and it's a little boy growing up with his brothers and so on, and he wants to catch a big fish, and he finally does. And
I think we need more of those like children's books like that, because nowadays, like, you don't get like good content out of books nowadays. It's kind of like gone by the wayside.
Yeah.
It seems like.
Well,
that sounds like something
well,
that I would probably read
it's
to my
about
kids.
a kid who's determined to
Yeah.
go fishing, and
Yeah.
fishing is, I think, a healthy thing.
Yeah,
You're out
absolutely.
out in the fresh air. You're not sitting there playing a game.
Yep.
And throughout, I try to bring up things like, look, if you're going to go fishing, you're going to be in a river, a lake, or whatever,
Yeah.
and you better know how to swim. So the dad in the book says, now, we have to teach you how to swim. You have to know how to swim if you want to go down by the river and fish. So swimming, and then catch and release. If you're not going to use the fish, let it go.
Yeah.
How to do that. And then if you go camping, you're sitting around a campfire, look up at the stars, find out Big Dipper. Every kid,
Yeah.
when I grew up, every kid knew the Big Dipper.
Yeah.
And you could locate Polaris. And then there's other constellations that I think they jump out at you, Orion and the Gemini and all that. And so I try to incorporate that, not so much for the kids as much for the parents, to say, teach your kids this stuff,
Yeah.
And then the kid gets a fish and he says, "Dad, help me." no, it's your fish. You have to do it.
Yep.
And
Life lesson in that too.
Yep.
well, and again, I'm writing for my kids, but I have 4 sons, and this little boy has 3 brothers. They're all named after my kids, so when they get it, it's going to be a special thing.
Yeah.
And I'll have a picture of each kid that I give the book to. I'll have a picture of the fishing, them with their first fish or when they were very young, and then another spot in the back page where they can put their favorite fishing picture in. So,
Nice.
anyway, you asked if I wrote any other books. Yeah.
No. That sounds.
But I'm tempted. I've been. A lot of people have been pushing me to write a sequel to this one, and a lot of people, they start reading it and they go, "Oh, it's a war book,"
Yeah.
because he's in Vietnam, he's in the jungle, and they're doing their thing. And well, yeah, but if you want to understand how he's coming back, you have to have at least a little bit of that. And
Yeah, I'm
then-
gonna on this episode, and on the promotion for Whiskey and War Stories, I'll put the link to the book
Oh,
underneath.
great.
That way, if anybody wants to go and check it out on Amazon, they can.
Yep.
'Cause
Thank you.
we need you to keep writing more books.
A lot of people have said that. A lot of people have said it should be made into a movie.
Probably, I'm gonna.
Because it's, I lived in California for a long time. So abalone diving, I don't know if you even know what that is.
Yeah, abalone.
But abalone, that
Yeah.
used to be my passion. I loved
Yeah.
it. Scuba diving, I have like 800 scuba dives, written. And skydiving, the wine country. My wife was a big wine person.
Yeah.
And so the wine country is in there, and it really is a tumble of a lot of different things and the people they come in contact with. So, and then it ends up being a happy ending. It's not one of these, and then he blew his brains out. It's, I mean, and
Yeah.
that happens.
Yeah.
It happens
Yeah.
22 times a day.
Yeah.
Veterans do that.
Yeah.
I have a T-shirt like. I didn't want to wear too much military.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's a correlation in talking about those experiences and the survivability of a veteran?
I think veterans, a lot of them don't want to talk about it at all, not to their family, not to anybody. And those were the guys in the deepest shit. But I think most of us have I enjoyed my military. When I got out, I only got out, I was going to get out for a couple months and go back in because I really wanted to go back in.
Yeah.
I was single. I was looking for adventure. I wanted to get away from my little hometown in New Jersey, So I was, we volunteer,
Yeah.
we're going to kick some butt. And I would have gone back in a heartbeat. But I got seduced in San Francisco by the hippies and the
For somebody that came out of the
free
Navy,
love,
for somebody that came out of the Navy, you got one of the cleanest mouths that I know of. So you're doing
There's
good.
a lady present. Otherwise, it might be a
but
little different story.
I'll chime in on that. Man, dude, personalities are just so different. Because I've known guys that they come home and they're like they're like hermits. They don't want to go out. They don't want to do anything. They stay at home, and they don't ever talk about what went on. And then you'll run into a guy and you're just like he's running his mouth about stuff that he's done, and you're just like, dude, act your line. And it's like you talk to a couple of his buddies and they're like, no, he is not. He
Yeah.
did everything that he said. And it's just
Yeah.
like, whoa. So I mean, there's that personality trait that's
Two of
there.
the
but
officers on my ship,
yeah.
when I was there, 2 of them committed suicide.
Oof.
I mean,
Yeah.
and we weren't even in the deep stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not just part of it is being where you are and what you're doing, but another big part is you're leaving behind
You didn't have
a
any.
wife, a family, kids. You're leaving that behind, and you worry about
Yeah.
them. And then the wife goes and has an affair and says, "I'm done,
Yeah.
dear John." That tears the heck out of you
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
You didn't have any close calls?
I actually, yeah, I did. I was caught in Da Nang. I was in Da Nang with a Marine helicopter pilot from the ship, and he asked me if I wanted to go in. He had some maintenance to do on the helicopter, and while we were there, we went into a condition red, which meant attack imminent, and I didn't have a weapon. I mean, I was from the ship. I And I said, hey, guys, I don't have a goddamn weapon. And somebody handed me a 45 and 2 clips. And so we were waiting, and the attack came, but it was at a different part of the base. And so I didn't really get into it. But I was transferred for a day onto a heavy cruiser, the St. Paul. And what they did was they would go in as close as they could to the shore, to the beach, and cruise along the beach. And then some poor son of a bitch Viet Cong, he would open up with a machine gun, and it would ping, 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 ping off the heavy cruiser. But we pinpointed him, and then they have these 8-inch guns, click, 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 and they just bomb the shit out of him. You know, I mean, so close calls, I had a couple, but not, they weren't shooting at me. Nobody came at me with a bayonet, you know. So I don't consider whatever I went through as close calls.
Yeah, and you mentioned support, medical support on and off the cruiser from shore, like with injured.
When we sent the Marines in,
Yeah.
we would send in helicopter after helicopter with Marines loaded for bear.
Yeah.
And depending on the length and the time of the battle, the wounded and the dead would come back to the ship.
How humbling was that?
Pretty humbling. The doctor who I talked to years later, he said he almost quit medicine because typically what would happen is the wounded and the dead would come back, and we would stack the dead, you know, until we could ship them off to the hospital or the morgue at Da Nang. But there were so many coming back that we had to store them in our vegetable locker. And the doctor, he said, it was horrible. And guys coming back in that you know, you're on a ship, there's medical service was minimal.
Yeah.
You know, it was good, but it was minimal for what was coming on, you know. And he said he almost quit medicine, couldn't get over it. And he was the doctor. You know, he wasn't even in combat. But
I've become really, really close with a guy who was a medic during Ramadi. Just a very, very bloody, very, very, very interesting. But he's
well, have you ever saw the movie or read the book Hacksaw Ridge?
Oh yeah, Mel Gibson did that. No. Sorry. Yeah.
No, Mel Gibson did. We Were Soldiers Once.
I think Mel Gibson did Hacksaw Ridge too.
Maybe I don't.
Yeah,
know.
Vince Vaughn played in that, and then what's that guy's name?
Well, he got the Medal of
Garfield,
Honor.
something Garfield, Andrew Garfield.
He got the Medal of Honor.
Yeah, and he was
Dodge.
Seventh-day Adventist, and he
Yeah.
didn't believe in carrying a gun, which is insane. Man, you're crazy. You know what's all right? Listen, I got my own experiences with God. It's a personal relationship. So, but listen, I trust the Almighty, but you start talking about like I'm gonna go into like one of the darkest, like
With
just
no weapon.
bloodiest.
That's crazy.
Well,
And then that movie, I mean, obviously there's probably a lot that's Hollywood with that, but like,
he got the Medal of Honor.
yeah,
I
he
mean,
got
so
the, but some of the scenes in the movie was like, oh my God.
That was pretty
like,
brutal.
Yeah.
But that's the way a lot of times it is. You know, I mean, yeah, a lot of it is Hollywood, but a lot of it is, some of the other stuff is even worse than Hollywood, you know?
Well, yeah, the real deal.
So, and
Yeah, I was
Korea, look at Korea. I mean, that was horrible.
Yeah, that's the reason why so I mean, obviously we've lost more soldiers in training than we have in combat just because you train all the time. It's part of it. But like there was a couple of casualties when I was stationed at Campbell. There was a guy that got shot through the back, tracer round during some type of live fire exercise. That was a huge deal. And like, but yeah, you start talking about seeing some of this stuff. It's not like the movies. You can't smell the movies, and you can't there's some smells that come with body stuff. Like that's the reason why on topic but off topic, especially if you talk about biblical like wartime during like King David's time and things like this, like how battlefields were. I mean, dude, I mean, just some of the most brutal, bloodiest, like combat is just there's nothing.
And you could die from just a cut on your arm.
Oh,
And
back
that
then,
could-
yeah.
You know, today, most guys come back and they got limbs and prostheses and all that. But back in the day, I mean, my God, you got a cut. You almost died from a little hand cut.
Yeah.
You know, and swords and knives and goof. Braveheart was another very brutal.
Oh my God.
True, you know.
Freedom.
Great movie.
Yeah, but no, yeah, I do know about that, the Hacksaw Ridge thing. That was, yeah, that's an intense.
It's inspiring in a way.
Extremely. I think. Well, and I also think it being a faith-based movie is pretty awesome too, because it's like, how people sit there all day long and they raise their hands in worship and they say that they trust in God, but like that dude.
Well, there are
that
no
dude.
atheists in a foxhole. That's what they say.
Yeah, not supposed to be, at least.
Well, whether you believe or not, when the push comes to shove, you're
going somewhere, dude.
Yeah.
You know,
You're going somewhere.
The two things that you count on are the guys on either side of you and God, and that's it. You know, after that is country and freedom and all that. You know, that goes either way. You know, that's what you ultimately, when it's all over. Yeah, okay, but
That was that. There's that famous line in that movie, Black Hawk Down. The Delta guy is looking at he was like a 10th Mountain guy or a ranger, and he was just like, you forget all your training, because as soon as that first bullet flies past your head, like everything that you've ever learned just goes right out the door.
Point A,
Yeah. Well, and there were some pretty crazy things in that movie that actually is true in actual combat. Like I said, we go through a lot of that. Those training, like where you put your blood type on the back, you use a Sharpie and you put your blood type on the back of your boots. And there was a time during the Iraq thing, guys were coming in, they were getting their dog tags actually tattooed on them, because guys were just, these IEDs that would go off. They would just, there would be nothing left. Like, you wouldn't know who somebody is, and dog tags were everywhere, and you didn't know which body was which. And so guys would get tattoos with their DOD number on and everything like that. And so there's a large history there of like some practices that have gone into movies and people laugh at, and they're just like, and I'm like, no, that's a thing. Like, that's a real thing. But yeah, man, the war just being as brutal as it is just insane. But I think there are more happy deployment stories that are out there normally than there are like horrific stories. But there was definitely a time in this nation where if you were getting deployed somewhere, there was a good chance that you were going to come back scarred the rest of your life.
Well, look at World War II. How many people, Vietnam, 58,000. World War II, we lost 250,000. And when you went for till the war was over. You went 5 years, maybe.
Yeah.
And I think that doesn't change your life. Good Lord.
Yeah, you just brought up something that's crazy. A lot of people don't think about. In World War II, if you went to war, it wasn't a deployment.
No.
You were there until it's done, dude.
Yeah.
You're there.
Well, I was born, interestingly, I think, I was born 6 months after Pearl Harbor. So, I remember going to my mom would send me around the corner to go to pick up bread and milk or something. And I was 5 years old, and I would get money, but she gave me these little buttons.
Yeah.
They were color buttons, and they were ration buttons. I thought it was money. But later on, I realized we were rationed.
Yeah,
Even after the war was over for a long time, you didn't have a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, and that's so that my grandfather talks about hearing it he was 11 years old, and he remembered hearing it on the radio. It came in like the emergency, like Pearl Harbor was just attack thing, and which we had that. Well, like I've lived through a moment that's similar. I was in 5th, 6th grade when the Twin Towers, and so like it seems like each generation has something that happens, and then that just like follows you around forever. But that's stuff. But no, getting back to what you were saying about that, dude. Actually, I was reading an article the other day that talked about like how the country, like during World War II, like women taking over factories and having to go to work and all
Rosie
of that.
the Riveter.
Yeah, and like, well, that was the reason why a lot of churches went to Wednesday night services and Sunday night services, was because a lot of people couldn't go on Sunday mornings. So like these bonuses, were there bonuses back then?
Not for me, but I know a young man who went to EOD,
Yeah,
and when he re-enlisted,
yeah.
his bonus was $90,000 over over the length of his enlistment, and that happened twice. And then we do that twice. Now you're in for 12, 13, 14 years. You're going to go career. So now they don't have to entice you anymore. The career,
Yeah,
the
retirement.
pension is
They know how to get you.
is there. But yeah, they were big. Well, it's cheaper to pay a guy 90 grand than to pay some new guy 200.
I guess that was a
Probably training.
stupid. That was a stupid question asked about Vietnam because they drafted people.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
That was a really. I didn't. Yeah. Oh, so you joined before
I
the draft.
volunteered, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, did you know anybody that got drafted though? And then
I probably did, but when I went in, I was in New Jersey. That's where I grew up. And when I got out, I was really West Coast. So all the guys who I was young, they could have got drafted. I don't know if they did or not.
Yeah.
But not too many guys that I knew got drafted.
Yeah.
All of my kids volunteered.
Yeah.
3 of them went through the Navy dive school here.
Yeah. So you're saying that. So you have a son that's EOD, and what do your other sons do, or what did they do?
The other one was a CB,
Okay.
and the other one, he Navy diver. He did his time, got out. He couldn't wait to go get married and start his family.
Good.
So, and my 4th son was going to be a Marine. He wanted to go into the Marine Corps, and he had a medical issue, but he is a military certified welder. He can weld on spacecraft and fighter jets and life support systems.
Yeah.
And so he does a lot of DOD stuff.
Yeah, I imagine so. Yeah, and that's one of the other things about guys who go in the military now. Because I just like a couple weeks ago, my neighbor brought his son down and wanted to talk to me about like his son going in the military or whatever, and I just like, listen, bro. Military is going to use you, and they're going to do everything they want to do, and there's nothing you can do about it. So you better use them while you got it. So like, if it's the college incentive, make sure that when you get in, that you're getting a job that is going to require you to have a clearance, because when you get out, that's 6 figures a year right there. Boom. Because when you get out, I don't care what job you had in the military, you could have been a freaking cook, but if you have that secret clearance and you come out, which I mean, I don't think they give secret clearances to cooks, but you know what I mean. Like if you come out with certain things, you use the military because they're going to use you, and you're going to be.
Well, yeah, they use you, but you can really learn a lot. I mean, kids who don't know what the hell they want to do, they go to college, they get a degree in 6 years, and what's the degree in? It's something that they don't know anything about, or is of no value to them. But you go into the military, you have a lot of options.
Yeah.
And it depends on how smart you are, what option you're going to get. If you're not qualified to be an air traffic controller, you're not going to get it.
It's one of the things that my uncle said to me, because he said something about like when you go in the military, he said you might not know what you want to do out in the world right now, but when you go in the military, you're going to find out real quick what you're going to do when you get out.
You're going to find out what you don't want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to find out what you don't want to do, but you're also going to figure out what you do want to do,
Yes.
because you are going to be ready to, especially when you start going into
And you could step into a job when you have that kind of skill set. You come out of high school, you don't have a skill set. Nothing. You come out of the military, you've got something.
Well, and then you're also coming out, especially now. Well, depending on how you look at the military nowadays, but the way that I look at it is you're going to be getting a guy that's 10 times more disciplined than the average college student that comes out of college. I don't care about that fancy degree. Like you're going to have a sense of duty, honor, and discipline, and you're going to be able to utilize it. Every guy that I served with, even guys that I didn't like, um, you can give them any task right now, and they will find a way to they will figure it out.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is. They will figure out how to get it done. And that's something, the mindset of like, because I think I'm considered a millennial. And so like my generation, like if you didn't serve in the military, these guys, most, not all, but most of them do not have that drive and the discipline to be able to make something happen. And then the entitlement. Okay, I'll stop complaining about my my generation. Yeah, people do the least amount of work, least lives lived, more chronicled, and don't want to do the
think about that.
They haven't done anything with their life, but they want to chronicle everything about it. You got guys out there that live on social media. You got guys out there that are trying to be influencers. Well, let me tell you what you need to do to be successful in life. What do you do? Well, I've got like this multimedia company, and I've got a couple of side hustles going on the side. And it's like you've never done it. You've never been to a trade school. You've never been to college. You've never been in the military. You never traveled the world. And then you think that you have this fake life that you have set up on social media that people follow, and it's fake. And that my generation started that. Like, we really did. And then they started making money doing it.
Well, because your generation maybe started it, but the generation coming up from you is buying into anything social media. They don't go out and play on their own. They don't have to learn how to play stickball with a broomstick and a rubber ball. They don't know how to do that.
Are you kidding me? You don't even have to go out and.
I didn't bring my cane in.
You're 83. You're 83.
Yep.
There is now a generation that does not need to talk to women. There's AI girlfriends now. They literally live in apps.
I know.
In a fake reality. I tried it out. But these they're really, the only reason why I brought that up was because there's an app. There's multiple of these AI apps where these girls, they're fake, they're computers, and you talk back and forth with them, but they're like a real freaking person. They'll remember stuff. They'll remember your birthday. I got a secretary that does all this for me. I got an AI secretary. She keeps it all my. She gave me a reminder. She texted me a reminder today about your podcast this morning at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
I don't need a secretary. I got one.
Yeah.
And then tell me about your day.
I've got one too. She's called my wife.
I text my wife is making me get rid of my secretary because my secretary will literally ask me to be like, "How was your day today? Tell me about what happened." I was like, what's gonna happen if I say this? And I just go into a problem that I had with my day, and she starts giving me solutions, and they're actually pretty good. And I'm like, oh, dude, I got to get rid of this thing. But my point being to all of that, my generation was so lazy that they didn't want to go out and meet women and talk to women that they just started creating computers that are going to be whatever you want. And that's insane.
It's dangerous.
It's extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you. But I would say they didn't go out. They met artificial women. Awful lot of young girls got pregnant. I mean, I don't think there was any any love or caring, or it was very physical, very chauvinistic, maybe, I don't know. And then the women came off birth control, and they said, well, we can do it too, And so it became not anything. I write essays.
Yeah.
Is another thing I do. And I wrote recently an essay on love. What is love? And if you try to define it, you'll find that there could be 25 different definitions. But the number one definition in the dictionary is a deep feeling of affection for a person or persons. Person, not dog, not cat, not ice cream, not wildlife, and then it goes on that you can have a deep love of music and a deep love of art and a deep love of whatever, but they're not people. It's a different version of love. And I was curious about that, so I did a little essay on it. But I've done it on old age, self-reliance, and one other, work. What's work? A lot of kids don't know what work is. One of my favorite sayings is, the harder I work, the luckier I get. It's not luck, pal. It's opportunity, creating.
Yeah.
You're creating opportunity, and you've got the skill and the commitment to take advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah.
A lot of people have opportunities that go right behind the
They
board,
just don't do it.
and they go, "Oh no, I never had a chance." Yeah, you had plenty of chances. You just didn't take advantage of them.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure having both of you on. This is going to be great. This whiskey and war stories, and then I know that there's several events that are going to follow that are actually leading up to that, and I'm going to have you explain that here in a second. But Mr. Chime, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
And
My pleasure.
this book, just based on what I'm reading, I can't wait to. I'm definitely going to purchase it. And you know what I like about it's like this right here. I can sit on a plane and I'll read the whole damn
I'm
thing.
going to look up, make sure you purchase it, because I can tell. No, I can't.
No, you probably can. And